Picture this. The Garden of Eden. Sunshine, beaches, all-you-can-eat buffets. No need for sunscreen, no sharks in sight, and the only bills you'll ever find are on birds. Sounds pretty idyllic, right? Like a retirement brochure, but without the shuffleboard and early bird specials. Well, for Adam and Eve, our two protagonists in this wacky tale, it was just another Tuesday. Little did they know, their all-inclusive package to paradise was about to expire, and it was all thanks to a talking snake with a knack for sales and a serious disregard for do not disturb signs. Think of it as a divine sitcom. We've got Adam, the lovable but clueless husband, Eve, the curious and quick-witted wife, and the snake, our resident trickster with a forked tongue and a hidden agenda. Their story is a roller coaster of temptation, consequences, and some seriously questionable fashion choices. So, grab your metaphorical popcorn, settle in, and get ready for a hilarious retelling of the oldest story ever told. Adam, our leading man, was living the dream. Created from dust, sure, but hey, who's judging? He had it made. A personal chef, angels are great with a whisk, a walk-in wardrobe the size of a small country, no need for clothes, mind you, but a guy can dream, and not a soul to answer to, except, well, you know, the big guy upstairs. But let's be honest, even deities have their off days. Now, Adam wasn't what you'd call street smart. He was more garden variety smart. He could name the animals, sure, but ask him to parallel park a camel? Forget about it. He was a simple soul, content to spend his days lounging about, enjoying the fruits, pun intended, of his non-labor. He was basically a human Labrador. Friendly, easily distracted by squirrels, and always up for a good scratch behind the ears. Life was good for Adam. Too good, some might say. He was missing something. Enter Eve. Eve, crafted from Adam's rib, talk about sustainable living, was no ordinary woman. She was intelligent, curious, and, dare I say, a bit of a rebel. While Adam was content to follow the rules, Eve was busy asking why. She was the adventurous one, the one who wasn't afraid to climb a tree or two. More on that later. Imagine her strolling through the garden, her brow furrowed in thought. She wasn't content with just accepting things at face value. She wanted to understand the world around her, to unravel its mysteries. Basically, she was the original subscriber to National Geographic, except she got her news straight from the source, sometimes literally, as we'll soon discover. Eve wasn't afraid of a little excitement. She embraced the unknown, the forbidden, the slightly dangerous. Little did she know that spice was about to come in the form of a smooth-talking serpent with a penchant for double-speak and a knack for tempting innocent women with shiny, forbidden fruit. Now let's talk about the snake in the garden. Literally. This wasn't your average, run-of-the-mill, don't step on me kind of serpent. Oh no, this snake was different. He was charming, he was cunning, and he had a voice so smooth it could melt glaciers. Think George Clooney, with scales and a forked tongue. He saw Eve's curiosity, her thirst for knowledge, and he knew just how to exploit it. He slithered up to her, a sly grin on his face, and whispered, "Hey Eve, ever heard of forbidden fruit? They say it's to die for. And just like that, the game was afoot. Now you'd think Eve would be a little suspicious. But our serpent friend was a master of persuasion. The apple, the fruit of knowledge, the original sin. It's amazing how much weight one little piece of fruit can carry. But let's be real, it was probably a pomegranate. Apples weren't indigenous to the Middle East, but hey, who am I to argue with millennia of artistic interpretation? So Eve takes a bite. The serpent watches with a smug look on his face, probably thinking about his commission on all those future apples. And what happens? Does Eve suddenly gain the ability to speak fluent Mandarin? Does she develop telekinetic powers? Does she finally figure out how to fold a fitted sheet? Nope. She gets a sudden and overwhelming sense of self-awareness, and not the good kind. Now here's where things get really interesting. And by interesting, I mean awkward. Eve, in her newfound state of self-awareness, realizes that she's, well, naked. And not in the I'm comfortable with my body, embrace your curves kind of way. More like the, oh my god, I'm exposed, vulnerable, and I forgot to shave my legs kind of way. She convinces Adam to cover up too. Peer pressure is a powerful thing, even in paradise. And suddenly they're both scrambling for the nearest foliage. And let's be honest, fig leaves, not exactly the most flattering or practical of outfits. Itchy, scratchy, and about as effective at covering up as a tea towel in a hurricane. The whole thing is just embarrassing. So, the jig is up. The big guy upstairs is not pleased. He's like a landlord who just discovered his tenants have been throwing wild parties, except instead of eviction, he's handing out eternal damnation. Harsh, but fair, some might say. Adam and Eve are cast out of the garden, banished from paradise for their transgression. No more all-you-can-eat buffets, no more lounging about in the nude. And worst of all, no more Wi-Fi. It's enough to make anyone want to repent. They find themselves in a strange, new world, filled with thorns, thistles, and the dreaded in-laws. The honeymoon is officially over. Paradise has been downgraded to a fixer-upper, and it's up to Adam and Eve to make the best of it. And so, the consequences of that fateful bite echoed through the ages. Adam and Eve's descendants, burdened with the original sin, were condemned to a life of toil, hardship, and the occasional awkward family reunion. All thanks to that sneaky snake and his irresistible sales pitch. Think about it. All the pain, the suffering, the endless cycle of work, bills, and existential dread. All because Eve couldn't resist a piece of fruit. Talk about a bad day at the office. It's enough to make you want to crawl back into bed and pull the covers over your head. But hey, every cloud has a silver lining, right? I mean, if it weren't for Adam and Eve's little blunder, we wouldn't have all the great works of art, literature, and music that were inspired by their fall from grace. We wouldn't have Shakespeare, Michelangelo, or the Beatles. So I guess we can thank them for that, at least. So, there you have it. The not-so-heavenly tale of Adam, Eve, and that sly, talking snake, a story of temptation, consequences, and the age-old struggle between good and evil, or at least good and slightly mischievous. It's a story that's been told and retold for centuries, each generation adding its own spin, its own interpretation, its own punchline. But what's the moral of the story? Is it don't talk to snakes, always read the fine print, never trust a fruit basket from a stranger? Who knows? Maybe it's up to each of us to decide. One thing's for sure though, the story of Adam and Eve is a reminder that even in paradise, things can go wrong, very wrong. But it's also a reminder that even in the face of adversity, even when we're wearing itchy fig leaves and facing an uncertain future, there's always hope. But let's take a moment to dig a little deeper. Adam and Eve were innocent, not knowing that it was wrong to disobey God before they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They were like children in a world without rules, unaware of the consequences their actions would bring. So, this fact makes us question, was God setting them up for failure? Was this a divine test or a cosmic stitch-up? Some might argue that it was a lesson in free will, but that's bullshit in my opinion. Others might argue that it was an unfair setup, a harsh way to impart wisdom, but fuck me, that's a bit over the top. But regardless of where you stand, it raises the age-old debate about responsibility and the nature of divine justice. Was it right to punish them so severely for something they didn't fully understand? I'd say no. Or was it a way to ensure they learned the gravity of their choices? A shitty way, in my opinion. It's a complex question with no simple answer, and perhaps that's the point, or perhaps not, who knows. It's a story that challenges us to think, to question, to wonder about the nature of good, evil, and everything in between. So as we clutch our Bibles and pretend it's full of good shit, remember, it's not just a story of loss and exile. It's also a story of growth, of learning, and of the eternal human quest for understanding how much of a dickhead God is. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real lesson here. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking the truth. And keep liking and subscribing. Because in the end, the journey is just as important as the destination. Start an argument in the comments below.